We are thrilled to welcome on for the first time Ted Nguyen at FB underscore film analysis. Ted's an NFL staff writer over at The Athletic and is perhaps the best in the game at breaking down film and all the X's and O's of football in a really comprehensive yet comprehensible way. I just always have loved his stuff, so I'm beyond thrilled to have him on. He's been aided by his time as a former football coach and researcher, which he uses to analyze football teams, strategies, personnel, and draft prospects. Ted, thank you so much for joining me. How are you doing today?
No problem. Thanks for having me on, and thanks for the kind words. I think you hyped me up a little too much, but yeah, glad to get going.
Oh man, no, it's the truth. I've just loved whether it's the YouTube breakdowns or your athletic articles, especially how you chunk it up. It's just so comprehensible, but so deep at the same time. So it's awesome. So I really, really appreciate it. I'm excited to pick your brain today. We're going to learn a little bit about what you do, how you do it, but also dive into Trey Lance, Henry Ruggs, Julio Jones, and Sam Darnold. Some great articles you've done over at The Athletic. I encourage anybody who has not read Ted's stuff over there, especially if you don't have an athletic subscription, go and check it out. It's the best coverage, especially of all football training camp. It's fantastic. So make sure you guys check that out. And if you're just catching this on YouTube or Facebook and you like what you hear, consider giving this a thumbs up. It'd be so appreciated. Help us reach more people, and consider subscribing and hitting that bell so you know when we're going live and we can answer all your questions when we do so. All righty, Ted. Well, let's dive in really quick before we get into the specific players and learn a little bit about you. For the few listeners on here that might not know you, what's your kind of quick bio? What do you do? When did you get started? What's your journey kind of been in this industry?
Yeah, well, I'll start all the way from the beginning. I played a little quarterback in high school in a triple option offense, which meant we passed the ball like 4 times a game. I was basically another running back, but I fell in love with the triple option. I had to have a good knowledge of blocking angles and blocking schemes and just learning option football. And it was an old school type of option, but little did I know that the whole football world would be option obsessed in the later years, but just in a different form. From the spread, from zone reads to RPOs and that kind of deal, and it all kind of translates together. But after I played, I knew I wasn't good enough to play college or anything, and my high school coach asked me to come back and coach some football. So I did that. I fell in love with coaching. I did that for a long time. I picked picked the brains of a lot of smart coaches from D1 programs to really good high school programs, and just kind of built my football knowledge base that way. And I was a teacher for a while, and while I was teaching, I was coaching football, and I just started a blog just for fun, just a blog about the Raiders. And it's mostly for my friends, but it kind of blew up, and one thing led to another, and believe it or not, I had stomach cancer and I had to get my stomach removed, so I don't have a stomach, believe it or not, but I'm totally healthy now. But that experience has kind of showed me life is too short and I want to do something more passionate about. So I quit my job teaching. I love coaching, I just didn't love the teaching aspect of it. So I quit teaching. I went full into sports journalism, had a starving artist phase for a couple of years. Then I got picked up by The Athletic, and it's been a dream come true ever since.
That's amazing, man. I got to ask you, because I'm actually very similar path to you right now. I'm a teacher. I love the summers for fantasy football wise, because I have them off and I can do this full time, but during the fall I'm doing it. What subject did you teach when you were in the classroom?
I did PE, and
Nice.
It's just kind of a natural, like if you're a football coach, you're a PE teacher, so you don't have like a ton of papers to grade after school, so you get straight to coaching. So I did that for a while, and it's just like kids are just not as active as they were before, so it was almost like pulling teeth trying to get them to run, and I just felt like I was babysitting too much, which is why I didn't really like the teaching aspect of it.
Yeah, I can feel that and certainly sympathize on many levels too. And hopefully you kind of motivated me here. Maybe I'll have to take that leap myself and go full time with the blog as it's growing here. I love it. Well, I know, what you've kind of made your name on is your film watching, and the way you break it down, as I said at the top, I think is some of, if not the best in the industry. What are some tips, tools, techniques you've kind of picked up and things you're looking for as you watch film?
I think it's just experience, as you watch film and you Well, I think it's good to have a good knowledge base of scheme, so you know what you're looking at, and players make decisions within the scheme. So if you want to scout, you have to know the basics of scheme at least, so you have an idea of what you're looking at and why they're doing the things they're doing. And once you're comfortable with that, then you can kind of just isolate what these players, how these players are playing, or their skills and traits that you're looking for. And it just makes a little bit more sense, and the picture is a little more clear for you. So, I would definitely suggest, if you don't have a good grasp on basic schemes, just inside zone, outside zone, power, just some simple pass concepts, and 5-step drops, 7-step drops, and what the quarterback's looking for here and there. I would definitely suggest learning those things, and you could do that by picking up a book. There's plenty of good coaching material out there, stuff that's meant for high school coaches that you can just buy and learn for yourself.
Awesome. Yeah, I know. And it's weird because in fantasy, there's like a big movement that schemes don't really matter. And I just don't get why people say that. Because obviously, when you're trying to project how these players are going to do, you look at their skill sets and then you think, how is this coach going to use this player? Even if, the talent can sometimes supersede the scheme, I still think you got to be studying that. Now, do you typically use like all 22, if and when we have access to it ever? Or what's some areas or tools you kind of use when you're doing the film watching?
Yeah, I definitely try to go for the all 22, and hopefully it comes back on NFL
Yeah.
Game Pass. College all 22 could be a little trickier, but there are ways to get it when if you're connected, and if you talk to some people. But yeah, all 22 is the way to do it, especially if you're trying to evaluate secondary or quarterbacks. You have to be able to see the full picture.
Love it. Yeah. Well, let's dive into some of your recent film breakdowns, specifically for fantasy owners, and what they can kind of take away. And we'll start with Trey Lance. I know you've done, as you said, you started your blog with the Raiders, and I know you do a lot of your work out there on the West Coast, and you've been covering the 49ers pretty hard here, and I love it. Because Trey Lance, he brings so much to the table. I'm so intrigued by what he might be able to do in this Kyle Shanahan offense. So I've been loving your pieces on him. Why don't we start with Trey as the talent before we think about how he's going to be used and how he fits everything? Did the film you watch on his college, is that kind of translating? I know you were out in camp recently too, to what you see in person. And what kind of player do you think the 49ers are getting?
Yeah, I think with Trey, you start with the sheer athletic ability. I mean, he's 6'4", 230 pounds. He can move. He's dangerous in the option game, and the ball just flies out of his hand. He has explosive arm. And I just love the way that he can snap his lower body to throws. You can see him going through his progressions. You can see him trying to exhaust his progressions. The time from when he makes a decision to when the ball comes out of his hand is very short, and I think that's an important trait you look for in quarterbacks. And I think that's one of the reasons why Kyle Shanahan liked him a lot, is just his ability to just quickly go from read to read. And yeah, I think as far as Lance, I don't think he's going to be the week one starter. I do believe Shanahan when they say that they believe in Jimmy Garoppolo, they want him to start this year. But I do think that we will see a lot of Trey Lance in certain packages. And as we progress in the season, we'll see more and more of him. And if Jimmy Garoppolo does falter throughout the season, I think the bye week is a good time where, Lance might be the guy to take over during that time.
Ooh, I would love to see it. That would be fantastic, because as soon as he steps on the field, there's a saying in fantasy football, it's called the Konami code, with like rushing quarterbacks. And it seems to me like he could be the great next one, like similar to Lamar Jackson levels, even potentially, with what he brings to the table. So you mentioned the quick strike. That's part of the reason maybe Shanahan liked him. Makes sense. It's an offense that loves to get it out quick, let the playmakers do a lot of damage. What are some other ways or reasons you expected them to draft him, and ways you expect him to be used in this offense, whether it's being sprinkled in, like you mentioned, or especially when he takes over as the full-time starter?
Yeah, I think early on we're going to see him just run a ton of option plays. We're going to see zone reads. We're going to see, but the thing with him is he's more of a north and south runner than some of the option quarterbacks you see are extremely explosive and fast, and they have that horizontal speed. So they're running zone read, where if they keep the ball, they're running towards the sideline and using that speed to outflank defenders. But with Trey Lance, he's a big kid. He could run north and south. He could lower his shoulder, break some tackles. So you're going to see some of those gap scheme type of options where he can get vertical right away. And I think early on, you're going to see mostly just option plays. And when the defense starts loading up, you're going to see him take some shots. But as he progresses and gets more comfortable within the regular offense, you might see him in there for a drive or two, run, kind of a hybrid of the Niners regular offense with this kind of spread option attack.
Awesome. Yeah. And do you think it'll kind of mimic how they used RG3, when Shanahan was back with Washington? I know in your breakdown, you had a lot of pictures and clips of that offense. Is that what you're kind of projecting? Do you think it could be even different in certain ways given Trey's skill set?
Yeah, I think we're going to see a lot of similar formations, similar plays, especially out of the pistol, because with the pistol, you get the both best world where you can run the wide zone and you can run the option. But like I said, I think Trey Lance is more of a north to south runner than RG3 was. So you're going to see some of those gap scheme runs where he can get vertical and kind of punish defenses with his size.
Yeah, I love it. And is there a particular player that you think would benefit, whether it's Ayuk or Debo or Kittle? Or do you think they'll benefit, or do you think they might kind of regress a little bit because there'll be less passing volume if and when Trey Lance takes over?
I think maybe Debo will benefit from it because there's going to be just different ways for Debo to get the ball when you're running all those type of concepts, where he can be a running back in a spread. He can be a pitch option type of guy, more RPOs to get him the ball quickly. And if a guy does suffer, it might be Ayuk, but, he also might be, he might get more deep passes. He might get more, air yards because Lance has a much bigger arm than Garoppolo. So I don't know if anybody will suffer, but I mean, it might be Ayuk just because, the passing volume might be lower, so he might get less opportunities. But when he does, it might be more explosive opportunities.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm picturing too. So I can't wait. Hopefully it's sooner than later, just because I like Garoppolo and their offense is always fun to watch. I just love the zone blocking scheme. It's gorgeous, but I just cannot wait to see what this kid does. The way you described the way the ball comes out of his hands, a lot of reporters saying that sounds like Mahomes almost, the way it just flies out and the way he can do it on the move and different things. So stoked for him. The other player, so a few more players I wanted to cover. You recently broke down Henry Ruggs, who obviously was the first rookie off the board last year ahead of CeeDee Lamb, Jerry Jeudy, Justin Jefferson, but he finished just 8th amongst rookies in receiving yards with only 452 yards. And as you mentioned in your breakdown, he never caught more than 3 balls in a game. He surpassed 100 yards only once. And he was held to 8 yards or less in 5 of his 13 starts. So really just did not seem to be a high impact player for the majority of the year. What kind of went wrong with this guy?
I think, when they drafted him, they had a sense, or they should have had a sense that this was a developmental receiver that, there was a lot of good to his game. And I'm not saying he's totally raw like some of the speed guys that we saw, but he was more raw than, guys like CeeDee Lamb and Jerry Jeudy, certainly Justin Jefferson, as far as his route running ability and just his size. So those are two things that needed, big time improvements as he was entering the NFL. You could see that lack of strength really play out last year against the press when he was being rerouted or he's being, slowed down at the line of scrimmage, which negated that 4.2 speed. His route running wasn't all there. The limited time in an offseason really affected his chemistry with Carr. There were times where he got open and Carr might not have trusted him and let it rip like he would with the guy like Nelson Aguilar, who he developed a really good chemistry with, or he just missed him because the timing just wasn't there. So those were all issues that Ruggs had to suffer through his rookie season. And reportedly this year, he's added some size. And it sounds like he's building the rapport with Carr now. And as far as usage, last year he was just used to clear out the field, run deep routes and clear out the field, take the top off the defense. And he did that. There was a lot of attention put on him, which opened up things for Darren Waller and, opened up things for the run game and opened things underneath. But this year, there is no Nelson Aguilar anymore. So maybe some of those deep targets go to him. Maybe they stop using just as decoy and start game planning ways to get him open.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you kind of expect him to take that step with the added muscle and whatnot? Obviously, it's tricky until we start seeing action and seeing how it really looks. But do you think there's a much more complete receiver there? Or do you think it's always going to kind of be this deep ball, whether he gets a deep shot or not? It might just be more of a decoy. Do you think he can take his game to a different level, though?
I do. I think he's going to have a much better season this season, especially with the added weight. And I think with the quarterback like Derek Carr, trust is such an important thing for him to just uncork it and take those chances with you. And it sounds like he is developing that with Carr. So I think he's going to have a much better season. Unfortunately, he's going to be pitted up against guys like CeeDee Lamb and Justin Jefferson.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's going to reach that level of productivity, but I do believe that he'll have a much better season and, maybe challenge for 800 to 1,000 yards this year.
That'd be pretty nice, especially given he falls to around 10, 12 or so in fantasy drafts right now. Be a real value at that point if he takes the next step. And I think it's a great bet, given the types of players you're getting at that point. The athleticism he brings to the table at 4.2 speed seems to me like a solid shot. On the opposite end of the age spectrum is Julio Jones. And earlier this offseason, the Titans snared him for just a second rounder and some change. And obviously, anytime you land a player who has the most receiving yards per game in NFL history, that's going to change the complexion of your offense and cause some seismic shifts into how they're going to use players and what the kind of overall outlook's going to be. So with Jones himself, when you were watching him last year, do you think, I know he missed some time, but on the games you saw, do you think he still kind of has it at age 32? And what do you think he's going to be bringing to this Titans team?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if he lost any speed, maybe half a step or so, but when I watch Julio Jones, he's explosive. He's such a violent runner, such a violent route runner. And he just creates so much separation because of how he explodes out the blocks and how he's able to cut on a dime and not lose any speed. So if maybe he lost half a step, but I don't see it even at his age. He still looks like an elite athlete to me, and he just bring that number one receiving ability to pair with a guy like I'm blanking on his name right now.
AJ Brown.
Yeah, pair with a guy like AJ Brown, who's a bona fide number one himself. Is just going to be a really interesting pairing for the Titans.
I know it's got to be the best duo in the NFL right now, and I'm just so intrigued to see how they deploy him. What's kind of your predictions? They've been obviously one of the more run-heavy teams the last couple of seasons with Derrick Henry. Do you think they evolve that with Julio on the roster? How do you think him and AJ Brown fits? Is Julio the number one? Is AJ Brown? How does that marriage kind of work with those two?
Yeah, I'm not sure if you can call a guy the number one with that much talent on the team, especially with the resume that Julio Jones has.
Right.
I think the offense will have to be a little more pass happy. I don't think there's going to be a ton, but I think they will pass the ball more because why wouldn't you with that receiving talent? And additionally, they were a big 12, 13 personnel team when they had blanking on his name too. The Titans tight end that went to the Patriots.
Oh, is it Jonnu Smith?
Yeah, when they had Jonnu Smith, they were one of the heavier 2-3 tight end types teams with Berkshire. But what losing him and then gaining Jones, I think they're going to be more of an 11 personnel team. They'll use less of those heavy tight end personnel packages. And, with using more 11, I think naturally you'll see a little bit more passing to just take advantage of the talent on the team. And, you're just not going to be able to have that kind of versatile personnel package that you did have with that with the tight ends that they used to have. So their most dynamic personnel package now is the 11 personnel instead of 12 or 13.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Now, do you think that will end up causing any changes to the run game? Because obviously with two tight ends, it seems a little bit more, blocking friendly and all that good stuff. How do you see this move kind of impacting Derrick Henry and the run game? Do you think he decreases his volume if they get a little bit more pass happy? Do you think it helps him in the sense that it could draw some attention away? How do you see that kind of shaking out?
Yeah, I think the volume will go down a little bit. And I think, as any back gets older, you want to be cognizant of the volume of carries you give that back. So I think it will affect Derrick Henry. I don't think it's going to be, affect him dramatically, but I definitely think his usage will probably go down a little bit. And as far as the running game is affected, I think there are different ways that you can create advantage running the ball with 11 personnel, like using more fly jet motion, which I think they will do with the type of personnel they have now.
Awesome. Yeah, that's fantastic. Now, my only real question with this offense isn't really in the players, it's at the coordinator level, because Arthur Smith's been so great these last couple seasons, especially in the red zone. Now comes in Todd Downing. And I know if you're a Raiders fan, you have some experience with watching him and his offenses before, and it wasn't very pretty in his first go around, to put it kindly. Should we be worried as fantasy owners that he's going to mess this up even with so much talent, or is it kind of foolproof?
No, I think it's definitely a concern because of how bad Todd Downing was in his first stint as an offensive coordinator. He undoubtedly has learned a lot. He coached under Stefanski and Kubiak with the Vikings, and under Arthur Smith, who was one of the most creative and best play callers in NFL. So that's a big loss, and he has some big shoes to fill. But like you said, there's a lot of talent on the field, but I would be a little weary of how Todd Downing is going to replace that level of coaching that Arthur Smith provided.
Absolutely. And the last player I want to break down here, and again, you can find all of these over at The Athletic to find Ted's work. It's all fantastic stuff here. And that's Sam Darnold, who's largely been, to put it bluntly, a disaster since being selected third overall just 3 years ago. Most recently, that was punctuated with 11 interceptions versus 9 TDs across his 12 starts. And so now we got to think, what's gone wrong? I mean, there's the obvious Adam Gase, the lack of talent around him. He wasn't in a good situation, that's for sure. Was that really it, though? Or are there some things that you saw with Darnold that just, kind of contributed to his own failures as well?
Yeah, no, Darnold was definitely at fault for a lot of things. He took a lot of chances he shouldn't have, very, very undisciplined with his footwork sometimes, and just relying on too much arm. But yeah, he did face a lot of adversity with the Jets as far as their protection, their scheme, just a ton of different different receivers, and not really having a guy that he could really trust and go to. So the Jets definitely was a bad environment for him. But I saw a lot of talent that made him a top pick as well when watching his film still there. So I have some hope that he can resuscitate his career in Carolina. I'm not gonna die. It's not a hill I'm gonna die on, but I definitely think that there's a chance that he can resuscitate his career over there. I think the talent is still there.
Yeah, what are some of those skills, those positives that you did see while watching him that he's going to be bringing over to Carolina with him?
Yeah, he has great pocket movement. I think he could slide in the pocket and get away from pressure and make just some throws that maybe only 10 quarterbacks in the league could make as far as off-platform throws. And when he's on, you can see that accuracy and placement ability. It's just is on a very high level. It's just that he had to deal with so much pressure, and when you deal with too much pressure and having to rely on that ability too much, it's to a detriment.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it should be at least we can knock out a lot of those surrounding issue concerns over there with the Panthers. The coaching scheme, Joe Brady, pretty high regarded so far, much more talent to throw to, a better line. Do you think he resurrects? How hopeful are you that he's going to resurrect himself and kind of have a rebirth over there at the Panthers?
I would put it at 30-70, 30 that he does, 70 he doesn't. And that, I think that's a realistic outlook on if it happens. It's just that you don't see quarterbacks that has played as badly as him all of a sudden switch up and become a much better quarterback. But again, the Jets situation is a unique situation. The talent's still there. It's just that we haven't seen it historically.
Yeah, it was about as bad of a situation as you could ask for. So we will see. Hopefully, there's hope. And most fantasy owners, he's not even getting drafted at this point, but could make sense in 2 QB leagues or as a late round QB2 type of flyer. I believe in Brady. I believe in the weapons around him. So it is on Darnold. I think the excuses are going to kind of be out of there. And he showed a lot that won't help him out, but we'll see. It's worth a flyer, in my opinion, in the last couple rounds. And Ted, thank you so much for coming on. That's really all the questions I have, other than, do you play fantasy yourself currently?
I did a few years ago, and actually I won 2 fantasy leagues. The last year I played, and then I retired just because sometimes watching fantasy, it really changes the way I watch the game. Instead of rooting for a team, I'll root for a player to get a bunch of stats. But then I came back. I came back last year and did pretty decent. I had Dak Prescott, who was killing things, and then all of a sudden he got injured. But then Justin Herbert kind of saved my season. So I'm back in a fantasy game now. It's a lot of fun, and I can't wait to get going this year.
Awesome. Glad to hear you're back. Do you have any type of keeper? I always ask all the analysts we have on here if they have any type of keeper questions or anything of that nature they'd like a second opinion on. I don't know if you do dynasty leagues, but anything off the top of your head you want a second opinion on before we sign off?
I haven't done the dynasty league, but I'm kind of curious to give it a try this year. And I guess, I don't know anything about dynasty leagues at all. I just know that you keep your players. So I guess my question is, how long do dynasty leagues go for on average?
Yeah, it's all about, especially if you have good buddies, like you were talking about, where you write the Raiders blog, people you know and can trust. Like I do one with the people I work on the website with. I know they're going to be around. I know they're going to pay. They're going to want to play. They're going to be engaged. If you get a bad league, though, then it's just like a mess where, like, after a year, somebody's team stinks, is in the garbage can, and they just kind of quit on it and they don't really try, or they just leave the league and don't pay. That's when you can run into issues with dynasty. If you get a good one, it's as fun as can be. And it sounds like you do have some good buddies you might be able to join in with, but you want to make sure it's not worth it to just jump into a random one with people you don't know. You really want to be people you know, you trust, maybe the athletic staff or whoever it might be. Would be my biggest recommendation if you end up taking on dynasty, for sure. Well, Ted, this was amazing. Thank you so much for giving me your time, your insight. It was wonderful to pick your brain on these players. Do you have anything, just maybe remind our listeners where they can connect with you, and anything else you'd like to pump and promote?
You can find me on Twitter at FB_film analysis, and follow my work on The Athletic. I also do a podcast about the Raiders. It's called State of the Nation. You can find that on all platforms.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Ted. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and good luck as you get back into fantasy this year.
Thank you. Same to you. Thanks for having me on.
Of course.
All right.